who you are just as you are is not only okay, but is extremely important and valuable to the world around you. At the age of 4, I remember having a distinct knowing that there was something very, very different about me. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And then when I was 6 years old, I grew up in the Bronx, and my mother, who was still the best mother in the world, was cooking dinner one night. And, you know, in the small kitchenette that the Bronx apartments have. And all of a sudden I looked at her. I don't even have the foggiest memory. I don't remember this conversation at all. And I turned to her and she said I had the look of so much pain in my eyes when I looked at her, and I said, "Mom, why am I so different?" And she said the sound of agony and sadness that was in my voice hit her so hard she had to turn her back to me in a little kitchenette kitchen in New York where we were. And the tears streamed down her face. And she had to get her composure, and then she eventually was able to gather herself together enough to come back to me and say, "You are different, but it's okay, and we're gonna figure it out." Had no idea what that would mean. 6 years old, I was at a family gathering, because I come from a big family, especially on my mom's side, and my cousins and my aunts, and I always wanted to be involved in the adult conversation, so I'd always sneak in under the radar when they weren't watching and pretend to hide behind couches and stuff so I could hear the conversations, because I always wanted to know. And they were talking and laughing and doing all the things that grown folks do. And I wasn't supposed to be in the grown folks' living room at that time. I was supposed to be with the kids, but I managed to find my way in there. And all of a sudden I started hearing their voices changed. And their faces changed. And the atmosphere, I've always been very sensitive to atmospheres and environments around me, and it changed all of a sudden. And I said, okay. I said to myself, whatever they're getting ready to talk about is really serious. And in hush-hush terms, hushed voices, there would be, "Did you hear she was with that woman? Does she know that she's a lesbian?" And I remember distinctly my stomach dropping and my throat closing, and the whole world stopped around me. And I had enough presence of mind to inch my way out of the living room and into the kids area, which is where I was supposed to be, because I knew that somehow, some way, that whatever it was, I didn't know what lesbian meant, but somehow that had something to do with me, and that it was completely unacceptable. And I felt completely isolated in that moment, and solidified to me what I already felt about myself at 4, which was that there was something wrong with me. I was a problem. There was nothing that I could do about it. I didn't choose it. I remember being so afraid. I remember wanting to get out of my own skin. I remember wanting to find a way to run away and escape, because there was nothing that I could do. I didn't ask for this. I remember looking up in the little apartment with tears streaming down my face and my little 6-year-old fist in the air and saying, "I hate you, God. Why did you make me this way when you knew this would be my life?" I was always feminine. I was never into the sports, and never into the cars. I'm into sports now, but it's for a totally different reason. And I was never, ever the typical black African-American male from New York. Never. And everyone in my environment made it explicitly clear to me that there was a problem. I remember there was a young boy in my age, and he was a young African-American dude. I can still see him to this day. He had an earring in his ear. I thought that was so cute. And he was super popular in school. And mind you, I grew up in public school in the Bronx. I was in private school for a while, but then my parents decided to put me in public school, and that's where I was. And I remember one day, out of the blue, I just went up and talked to him and I said, I like you, you're cute. And his face contorted, like he had just seen some kind of horrible creature that just suddenly appeared in front of him. And he grimaced at me, and he looked at me up and down and said, ew, loud. Now mind you, this is the cafeteria, so every kid can hear you. Ooh, you're gay. That's disgusting. And I remember that same feeling again. I was mortified. I felt myself go numb from the neck down. And thought, what is the quickest way that I can escape from the pressure that I'm suddenly faced with? Everyone was telling each other that they liked each other. I was doing what everybody else was doing. Why am I such a problem? And that's when I learned how to people please. I wound up taking the gold chain, very expensive, which I would find out later, that was on my neck off, and throwing it to him and saying, hey, do you want this? And of course it was very expensive, and everyone oohed and ahed over it, and he said thank you and walked away, and that was the last that I saw him. And that's when I learned that who I was a problem, and that the only way to be somewhat okay in society around me is to be a people pleaser and give them whatever they want.